With Unity open, we have to create a new project so we can learn more about what is input and how we can use it in this software. So first of all, we click on the new button in the top right. The project name is going to be Unity Input, and the location is going to be just a projects folder under my home folder, and I'm going to leave 3D enabled. After that, we just have to press create project and wait for a little bit. Okay, so in general, when you're developing software, you have to listen for input all the time. Otherwise, you would just watch a movie. So the user has to interact with the software. Okay, so if you have a software that is going to control the access of personnel to a certain company, the user is expected to give input to a certain machine. So, for example, if I start work, I have to use my personal company card to have access, or use my fingerprint, or maybe show my eye for a retina scanner. Still, all of these, they are different types of input. And input is very heavy on games because they rely on interaction. Okay, so for example, if you're playing a platformer game, you have a player. Okay, and the player is going to stand still unless you do something. Of course, there are some games that are different, but let's think of platformers in general. If you want to make a player to move, you have to press the right key. Okay, if you are on a computer, or if you are on a console like Xbox or PlayStation, for example, you have to use the shifter and then move to the right. Okay, the analog stick to make it move to the right. If you want to make the player to jump, you have to press the space bar, or you have to press the A button, and then you're gonna have to click to fire. And in more complex games, okay, in first-person shooters or third-person shooters, you have lots and lots of controls. Sometimes it feels like a gamepad with nearly 15-20 buttons is not enough. Okay, there are different types of things that we can do. So it is important to learn how to do these things in Unity. Okay, so you should watch this video after you've learned a bit about code, but still we're going to learn this in a nice steady pace. Okay, so first of all, as we want to do some tests, we need to create a game object. We need to create an entity that is going to be sitting here in our scene. It's not going to be visual, it's not going to be a 3D asset, but we're going to use it so we can test some things. Okay, so in the hierarchy, we're going to right click and I'm going to choose create empty, and this new game object, we want to rename it to game controller. We want to set its position to 0, 0, 0, so it's going to be in the center of the world. And now we need to create a script for it, okay, because we're going to write some custom behavior, then we need to write our own script. So we go to the project window in the assets folder, we're going to right click, select create, and then C# script. And we're going to name this game controller. Okay, and after we hit enter, we have to wait just a little bit for this script to be compiled and to be ready for use. Okay, now we double click the game controller file, and MonoDevelop is going to open, which is a free software. It's open source, it's great for coding, and already comes with Unity. Okay, and after the software open, we already have some lines in here. Okay, so in general, we just have the definition for the game controller in here. Whatever we put here is going to change how the game controller is going to behave. And we also have some methods. Okay, and these are going to be essential for us to test for input. Okay, methods are called whenever you want some operations to be executed. It's like you make a recipe for baking a cake or a pizza, for example. So when you call the method bake cake, you're going to follow all of the steps to make that cake. Okay, so we have the start method, which is called whenever this script is ready to be used, so that means the game controller has been loaded. And we also have the update method, which is called every frame. So every time the game is processed, and that happens dozens of times each second, then the update method is called. Okay, and for this script to be executed, it needs to be attached somewhere. So we have to go to Unity, we have to select our game controller, and we need to drag our game controller script to the game controller game object. Okay, we drag and drop, and once we drop, we have the game controller component. So this ensures that this script is going to be executed. Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to print a simple message. Okay, we are going to the start method in the game controller, and we're going to type debug.log hello world. So what are we doing here? We are accessing the class debug. That's basically for some developer methods and properties that can be used. We use the dot operation to access something that belongs to the debug class, and we call the log method. We're going to call an operation. And we open and close parentheses because this is a method call, and we pass exactly one parameter. In this case, it is the string, or the text, hello world. We just want to print that. That's pretty much the main lesson when you're learning any programming language, is just print this text, hello world. Okay? And once we're back to Unity, okay, also let's make sure that we save the script. Now we're back to Unity. We wait for this compilation to be completed, and after it is done, we're going to press the play button. Okay? And once this happens, we have to wait just a little bit for the compilation to complete, and then we have the message in the console, hello world. If you can't see the console, you can enable it by just going to Window and select Console. Okay, so we've printed this message. That means that we already have access to the script, it's been properly executed, so we can test a few things. Now, the input methods, they need to be checked every time. Okay, we need to put them in the update method. And why is that? For example, let's say you press play and then your game is running. At that moment, no keys are being pressed. Okay, but if a key is pressed, we are going to do something like printing a message, like pressed right, for example. Okay. However, there are two ways to do this. Okay, in other programming languages and other APIs, for example, you can listen for events, for the event of a key press, and each key press contains its own method. But there is another way we can do this in Unity that makes more sense and makes the code to be a bit tidier. Okay, so in the update method, we need to check if some key is being pressed. We're going to check for space now. So to do this, we need a conditional block. So we're going to type if, open and close parentheses, and open and close curly braces. The if block is a block where we ask a question. Okay, so we're going to ask something here, like if 1 plus 1 equals to 2. So if this is true, which it is in this case, we're going to execute whatever operations we put between these curly braces. Okay, so inside this scope. But if whatever we put here is false, like 0 equals to 5, for example, if this is false, what we put here is not going to be executed. However, what we want to put here is we want to check if the space has been pressed. To do this, we're going to type input. Okay, so input is the class that is basically the interface for the input system, like you can see in the summary. So input dot get key, right? We're going to open and close parentheses, and between parentheses, we're going to pass the string space. Okay, so getKey is a method that receives the name of the key that wants to be used, and this is going to return a Boolean value, as you can see here in this tooltip. A Boolean variable is basically true or false. Okay, so this method call is the question itself that we're putting in this conditional block. Okay, so if space is being pressed, this is going to return true, then we're going to print something. If this is false, this is going to, well, it's going to evaluate as false, then nothing is going to happen. So when getKey space is true, we're going to print debug.log, and between parentheses, we're going to pass a string jump. Okay, so we're going to save this. Now we move back to Unity and wait for this compilation to be done. After this, let's just clear the console to make sure everything is going to be okay. I'm going to press the play button, so the game is live now. We have the hello world printed, and if I press the space key, jump is being printed. Okay, but there is something interesting happening here. Notice that my console contains the collapse box enabled. Okay, that means that if multiple identical messages are being printed one right after the other, they're going to be collapsed, they're going to be joined. Okay, so we see only one jump message here, but it has been called 50 times. Okay, the problem is if I press space and I hold it down, it's going to be printing all the time. Okay, so 100 times, 200 times, 300 times, the event is happening all the time. But if I release it, then it stops printing. Okay, so we stopped at 500 times. This is not what's supposed to happen when you want to make a player jump. Okay, so if you press the space button, you want the player to jump, or for example to fire a bullet, for example. However, you just want to jump again if you release the space button and you press the space button again. You can only shoot with a shotgun, for example, once, then you have to release the key and press it again to shoot. And that applies for shooting grenades and shooting rockets if you are on a space game. Okay, if you are If you want to enter a card, and that's the same thing, you just have to press the button once. Okay, so this works different. So to do this, to make this jump to work as a trigger key, it's what we commonly call, instead of using get key, we use get key down. Okay, and here's the thing. If you look at the summary, it's going to say returns true during the frame the user starts pressing down the key identified by the name. Okay, so there's an interesting concept here. Remember, the update method is called once per frame. Your game is being processed all the time, so if if the app is open for 10 seconds, then it has been processed like 600 times. It's always doing calculations, always listening for input, putting things on the screen. Okay, lots of operations are going on, and they do in these little chunks of time, in little frames. So an app that is going to run very smoothly runs at 60 frames per second. Okay, so update happens 60 times a second, and get key down is going to return true only in the exact frame that the key has been pressed. So we are in the update method, even though it's happening all the time. If we press the space button, get key down returns true only once. It then switches back to false, and you have to release the space key and press it again, so get key down is going to return true. So now let's save this, go to Unity, and again wait for a compilation. We're going to press the play button, and now if I press space, notice that jump has been printed only once. I'm going to release space key, press it again, 2, 3, 4. Then get key down is working as a trigger method. Okay, it's printing one right after the other. We can even disable the collapse and try like this. Okay, so it's working properly. Alright, so this is how it's worked for the space button, but if you want to move to the left or to the right, we want to use the get key method. So let's make some prints for that. We're going to type here if input.getKey, and between parentheses the string left. We close the parentheses properly, we open and close curly braces, then we're going to put here debug.log move left. We do the same thing for the right key. If input.getKey, and between parentheses right, then we're going to print debug.log, and between parentheses move right. Okay, now we save this, and also let me just adjust this here. Okay, I just missed the double quote. We're going to save this, wait for the compilation to complete, and now that it is done, we can press the play button. So there we go, we have the hello world message. We can trigger the jump events one right after the other. If we hold the left key, move left is going to be printed all the time, which is expected because we do that for movement. And if we hold the right key, move right is being printed, okay, like this, which is expected. So now that we have these things done, let's save our scene just so we don't miss the game controller. We go to File, Save Scene. We're going to name this game.unity, so the scene is saved. And in the next video, let's work on making a very small cube to move.